invite anyone who thinks the Liberal Democrats are exaggerating when we talk about Victoria turning into a police state to go for a picnic. If you manage to find one of the marked circles available at a park, you'll need to ensure that you're with a designated friend, you're both wearing fitted masks and are within 5 kilometres of your home. And while you enjoy your picnic, you can entertain yourself by watching police ride past on bicycles, mounted police going around on horses, patrol cars doing laps on the streets and helicopters overhead. Meanwhile, police drones will be able to tell whether or not you're having Vegemite or quince paste on your crackers, and they can record that information for their records. And while you're at the picnic, if you spend an idle moment checking social media, you'll probably see the latest video of police swarming around someone at the beach, snatching phones off old ladies or arresting pregnant women in their home. And then you'll have to scurry back to home detention before your 2 hours are up. And if that's not a police state, I ask, what is? Now, consider this. While all of this has been going on, instead of realising that we shouldn't use police to solve a health problem, someone has thought we need more power, we need more control, we need to hand out more fines. And to do that, we need more people with more powers, and those people should be anyone that we want. They thought Victorians are getting way too comfortable. Wouldn't it be better to give powers of warrantless search and seizure to anyone we choose? And wouldn't it be even more fun if we let them do this on the grounds that they reckon the person might just do the wrong thing? We won't just be arresting people for crime, we can arrest them for crime that they might commit, or pre-crime. Just imagine, we can get neighbours to arrest neighbours before they commit crime, and soon there will be no crime. Genius. But instead of scaring people and calling it the State-Appointed Home Invaders Bill, let's call it something nice and neutral. Why not the Omnibus Bill? Brilliant. Of course, as it's turned out, even the most authoritarian members of the crossbench could not swallow this legislation, so I understand that the worst of these provisions will be removed via amendments. But they'll not be removed because the government recognises that they breach human rights or are straight out of the Stasi playbook. They will be removed because the government does not want to be embarrassed by losing a vote on this bill in the chamber. So I understand that the most obscene parts of the Omnibus Bill will be removed, but we have to look at the rest of it with the understanding that it was written by someone who thinks that A Clockwork Orange was a Law and Order training video. Sure enough, there's plenty to detest about the Omnibus Bill. The Omnibus Bill gives powers of warrantless search and seizure to police, protective services officers, health workers and interstate public servants. This is flat out unacceptable to liberal democracies around the world. The Fourth Amendment of the US Constitution protects Americans from unreasonable search powers of this nature. It is sad to reflect that Americans who wrote this amendment in 1789 were more enlightened about human rights than lawmakers in Victoria today. And meanwhile, over the past few weeks, our officers have been deluged with queries from members of the public who are understandably worried and confused about the Omnibus Bill. And incredibly, the government has left it to us to do the explaining. Even major industry groups like the Housing Industry Association tell us laws are regularly changing and are vague and impossible to interpret. They are naturally worried that their members could face fines of more than $80,000 for offences that have been barely defined. They tell us they get different advice from different government departments who, for example, cannot easily explain the difference between landscaping and building work. The feedback we are getting is telling in two ways. Firstly, it shows people no longer trust the government to tell them what's going on, and secondly, the government has failed to consult with and seek the support of the public. This lack of consultation should be more than enough reason for us to toss the Omnibus Bill in the bin. And who can blame the public for feeling anxious or confused? On every occasion when the government has removed personal liberties, human rights have been trampled and there have been serious abuses of power. This anxiety and fear can all be traced back to laws passed here by a government deaf to the suffering of its constituents. Meanwhile, Victoria's human rights departments appear to be doing little more than rubber stamping the most shameful breakdown of human rights in this state's history. And now the World Health Organization has pointed out that it does not advocate lockdowns as a primary way to control a virus. The pretense that this is about science is over. The Omnibus Bill will not save anyone from COVID because, like the rest of the government's pandemic response, it's about shock and awe. The government has never shown any respect for the personal freedoms of Victorians under lockdown, and so we are no longer shocked, but we are in awe of how cheaply they've discarded our human rights. All emergency directions are supposed to meet the obligations of the Human Rights Charter, including being proportionate, least restrictive and necessary. There are question marks around whether many of these health directions under the emergency powers actually meet these criteria. We are assured that there are assessments against the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, but they're secret. We are assured that the directions are based on the best possible public health advice, but this is also secret. The fundamental problem with this legislation is that the government expects people to trust them, but the government does not trust the people. We have seen more than enough evidence that this government cannot be trusted with the power that it has, let alone the power that it wants to gain through this bill. The government has become drunk with power and they seem incapable of responding to the pandemic without the use of force. This bill marks one of the low points in human rights in Victoria. The Liberal Democrats reject the Omnibus Bill and we will not rest until the human rights and personal freedoms of Victorians are returned in full with interest. Being a Libertarian is sometimes described as like being the only sober person in the car and no one will let you drive. The government is driving us into the dark.